Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for the Voidcast Dais. This is the newest trial made available by patch 6.4 in Final Fantasy XIV, The Dark Throne. This fight is meatier than other trials and might seem to drag on at times. Here to give you that spark and help you with your assault, my name is Miztech and I'll be your trial guide. The boss will begin by casting Terra Storm, and a large rock will form over one corner of the platform. All players will need to move away from this area as it will soon fall to the platform in a large AoE circle that must be avoided. Throughout the encounter, the boss will turn to face a random player and begin to cast Crescent Blade. This is a massive frontal attack that players must move behind the boss to avoid. Anytime you see the boss turning to a random direction, be ready to quickly move behind him. Arctic Assault is a two-part attack that will target opposite sides of the boss, indicated by the directions of the ice arrows on each side of the telegraph. Players will need to move into the sections behind the arrows to avoid getting hit. Void Meteor will target the two tanks for 4 comet hits before one final larger meteor blast. Tanks should move away from others and pop appropriate cooldowns. Lingering Spark will target the ground under players with multiple large AoE circle attacks at the end of the cast bar. Players will need to move away from these areas as necessary to avoid getting hit. Binding Cold will deal high raid-wide damage and apply a 9-second frostbite debuff to all players. Healers be ready with their shields and heals. Eventually, the boss will jump to the center and begin to cast Azdaja's Shadow. A short cutscene will play as the boss powers up his blade. Black Fang will then mark the phase transition and deal massive raid-wide damage in multiple hits. Healers be ready. The boss will again cast Azdaja's Shadow, essentially powering up his blade to add extra attacks the next time he uses Shadow Crescent. During the next Shadow Crescent cast, players will need to move away from the boss to avoid the extra point-blank AoE attack. All players will also be targeted by circle AoE markers, and they'll need to spread apart to avoid overlapping at the same time. The boss will then leap to the north side of the platform, and 2 stack towers will appear in the east and west. A random healer will also be targeted by this massive knockback marker, indicating that all other players will soon be knocked away from the healer. To handle all of this, the healer with the knockback marker can stand still in the center or south section of the platform. All other players can then pre-position around the healer to be knocked into the soak towers around as necessary. Alternatively, you can use the knockback immunity to avoid the knockback completely while moving in to soak the towers. Immediately after, the dragon will appear on the healer originally targeted by the knockback marker and tether to them, before diving across the platform in that direction in a wide line attack. This healer can point the dragon tether away from the center of the platform to avoid hitting the rest of the raid. At the same time, the boss is casting Double Meteor, and 2 proximity damage markers will appear in the corners of the platform. The raid will need to run north to minimize damage, all while dodging the line attack from the tethered healer dragon. The boss will then leap to the center and cast Gale's Spear. This will spawn 4 clones in a specific order that will each move to one of the outer edges of the platform. All players will need to pay attention to the order in which these adds spawn, as their incoming attacks will go off in the same order. Orbs will then appear across the entire edge with only one open lane in each set. Players will need to line themselves up with the free lane to avoid getting hit for each round of Gale Blasts until all 4 clone attacks go off and disappear. Next up, Void Stardust will spawn 2 circle moving telegraphs in opposite corners. These circle attacks will move across the platform edge before turning around and moving back through the center. To easily dodge this, players can stand close to the initial telegraph, and once it disappears and the attacks begin, quickly move into that area to avoid the rest of the hits. Mechanics will begin to repeat here. When the boss casts Eventide Fall, the 2 healers will be targeted by lineup markers. The raid will need to split into light parties and stack on each healer to share the incoming damage. During the next Shadow Crescent, players will dodge it as usual and then be ready to move away from the boss to avoid the extra point-blank AoE. This time, one player will be marked for stack up and the raid will collapse together to share the incoming damage. From this point on, you've seen all possible mechanics, and it's just a matter of getting through each one until the boss is down. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Up next, we'll head into the new normal raids and Pandemonium. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.